Which job did you quit because it damaged your mental health? Story 1. Yes, I had a job that I loved. Had coworkers I loved. I'm still friends with some. Ownership changed. My job, which was Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, somehow turned into on call all the time. My workload was always heavy, got added onto. I would say no to additional workload. It somehow still ended up on my plate. Somewhere around a year after the ownership change, I found myself Googling heart attack and mental breakdown symptoms because I knew something wasn't right. I finally walked into work one day and handed in my notice. No job lined up. Didn't think it through. I wrote up my notice 5 minutes before I left for work that day. Due to bills, I ended up taking a job I was overqualified for and made crap for pay. But after a few months, I got hired to where I am now. I do the same type of job as the one I walked away from. Did it work out for me? I'd like to say yes, but only time will tell. I will say both myself and my family are much happier right now, and I haven't wondered if I'm having a mental breakdown or possible heart attack since I left. That's a win. Story 2, Radio Shack. I worked there for about 3 months. They paid minimum wage plus commission, and the only ways to earn commissions was pushing useless extended warranties or cell phones. And we had to push batteries, like AA and AAA batteries. We were expected to get so many of these things, every so many customers. Batteries were like 1 out of every 10 customers. I got a headache every time I walked in for a shift, knowing I had to push this crap on. The major turning point for me was when my manager, who was just an arrogant little man who was built like Danny DeVito with John C. Riley's face, butted into a transaction of mine. The customer was a special needs man who was buying an UpConvert DVD player. It didn't feel right to push the extra, considering the circumstances. My boss saw this and forcibly took over the transaction and talked this poor man into buying extra cables and disc cleaner and warranties for everything he could. What should have been a roughly $50 purchase for this man ended costing him close to $100 when all was said and done. The cherry on top was when the man left, the manager printed a copy of his receipt, shoved it up in my face, and proceeded to brag about it. I quit a few weeks later. Luckily, I was able to go back to my old job for a while I looked for a permanent job. I ended up going back to school about a year or so later. Story 3. Quit my job at a call center without anything lined up. I used to cry in my car before a shift, used up all my sick days, and it worsened my suicidal thoughts. So I got myself out of there when I couldn't take it anymore. I quietly stood up from my desk and quit on the spot. I had never walked out on a job before. It took me a month to find another job with just slightly less hours, so a little less money. But it was worth it because I'm a lot better mentally and physically, and I like the job. Sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. Story 4. Worked a call center job after 1 week of training and 2 days of actual work. During the training, you're shown how it's not possible to order a free trial of these expensive products without seeing the clearly marked in multiple locations, terms, and conditions. But then I got to the floor, and these people were old people who were offered a free gift when they bought something on Amazon. They never went to a website and ordered a free trial. They were lied to and then charged $80 plus 3 weeks later. It was a scam built to prey on old people. I had a panic attack on the way to work and quit when I arrived. F that noise. Story 5. I quit a job working as a logistics manager for a hospital. It was the worst job. The union reps would constantly mess with you, taunt you, and try to get you fired. I was constantly on edge and would basically snap over everything. I developed a huge persecution complex where everyone was out to get me. They would purposely feed you false information that would go against required practice. For example, one of the reps gave me a fake forecast for products we needed for the upcoming week, so I was to arrange the delivery or ordering and storing for the products. When I ordered it all and had it delivered, I found out we needed like 1/10 of the products that were ordered. So I had to explain to the finance department why we exceeded our weekly budget. Basically, my choices were be fired or quit because of the colossal screw up. I was 21 at the time. I'm now in school to get my bachelor's of accounting, so I guess it turned out pretty good because I could leave that horrible industry. Story 6. I was a mailman for about a year. Thought I'd give it a shot since my dad did it for almost 40, and I figured it'd help me understand him better. Best money I'd ever made. Starting pay was something like 16 and some change an hour, especially with OT, but I was miserable. Just miserable. My commute was 45 minutes in clear traffic, but if I didn't finish my shift in time and I hit rush hour, the commute could be up to 2 hours. I'd leave when it was still dark, get home when it was just about dark again, have just enough time to eat an absolute crapload of food. Walking 10 plus miles a day is sort of a double edged blade. Then go to bed and do it again, and again, and again. Sundays included. Thanks, Amazon. When I got sunburn and frostbite on the same day, my thick head finally realized the money wasn't worth it. My wallet was full, but I was bankrupt when it came to emotional or creative energy. Story 7. Yes, 10 years ago, I was in a bad relationship and struggling with chronic anxiety and depression. My long, stressful commute and job I hated just added to my stress. One day I got a migraine and went home early while my boss was at lunch. The next day she requested a meeting, and before the meeting was to take place, I sent her an email with my resignation. My anxiety took over and I just couldn't face whatever it was she was planning to say to me. It turned out badly. My dad was extremely angry and said some pretty cruel crap. My relationship with him has never been the same since and probably never will be. My boyfriend dumped me a couple of months later and kicked me out of our house. I had to move back in with my parents at age 30 and wasn't able to find another job for 11 months. When I finally did start working again, I had a string of more horrible jobs that I hated. My career still hasn't recovered and probably never will. Without some stroke of dumb luck, I'll probably be working underpaid, somewhat crap jobs until I die, and my mental health has improved a lot though. So I got that going for me, which is nice. Story 8. Didn't have a job lined up but knew I would be okay for a while. I pretty much drained my savings partly because of my mental health. My best advice is also really bad advice, but I would suggest finding ways to deal with it while you work. Am I getting better? Sure, in a way. But I've learned that, at least for me, this will probably be a lifelong battle. And most won't have the capital to sustain that. We're no longer a country of prosperity for many hardworking Americans, just trying to survive. Last part is true for many places. I'm in Toronto, it's the same. I wanted to quit for mental health reasons. I had a crazy boss who demanded things, then disappeared, and would show up minutes before a meeting we'd be presenting in. She'd have me change, make edits in a 20-page deck, go set up the room and get the projector working, dial in for a remote participant. Then, before the meeting, I would openly say that I should have shared the deck with all participants before the meeting. How can I do all of that within 15 minutes? That's just one example. I put in 12 to 14 hours each day. She fired me at the end. Recently found out that she hired a friend of hers from another group within the company. I did my best. My mental health got so bad and I made it worse by smoking up everything. I've been unemployed for 3 months now. Mental health is definitely better, but the worry of savings running out is getting to me. Hopefully things work out soon. Story 9. I did it due to the long commute and mental health. I would recommend against it because it sets a bad precedent for the future. Also, unemployment depression is a lot worse than employment depression because there is no routine, nowhere to be embarrassed to meet new people out of fear they will ask about your situation. I was unemployed for 3 months, and my depression was so bad that I rarely talked to or visited family because I was actively lying that I was still employed but looking for a new job to get out of retail, and I was terrified of slipping up. I had quit a full-time job to work a seasonal job because I was miserable and hated working at that full-time job. I thought I would be able to be hired after the seasonal period, but I didn't perform up to the company's standards and was let go without a single word or call from my supervisors. I kept thinking for my entire unemployment that I was stupid for quitting, that I should have just sucked it up. And was it even that bad? Maybe I was just being dramatic? I am now employed and love my job and the company I work for, but damn, that sucked. Story 10. I worked at a daycare that promoted physical, mental, and physical abuse as child control, as well as underfeeding to reduce food costs, in a low-income area where these might be some of the kids' only meals. I awoke physically ill puking before work daily. One day I went on lunch break, had a panic attack. On the way in, a coworker calmed me down, and I never went back. They asked me to come in to discuss why I quit. I told them unless I'm legally required to never come back again. I did try to report them 3 times, and the inspector came and walked out with coffee and a nothing to see here check. I got another job shortly after, so it worked out. The chain of daycares is under new management now. Story 11. Yep, was absolutely burned out from my previous job. Loved the people, but the workload and pressure to work overtime was just too much. Ended up worsening my depression and really made me doubt my ability. I ended up resigning in January this year, and it was for the best. While it was scary to not have another job lined up, I did enjoy all the free time I had. I read all the books I wanted to read, traveled a bit, and just basically did whatever I wanted on a particular day. It felt so nice to know that I had full control over my time. Around 3 months of being unemployed, I started searching for jobs and managed to find one. My current job is nicer, and there's more work-life balance. If you're going to quit your job without a replacement lined up soon, I recommend you just rest a bit and do the things you want. Very freeing. Or, if you don't want to stay idle, learn a new skill or improve your current set. Story 12. Worked in the family construction business for about 14 years. Was running one of the main crews as a foreman. The owner was leaning heavy on me and putting stresses on me that weren't warranted with the position. Had money that I was saving for a down payment on a house. Quit after a blowout with the boss over something so trivial. It's mind-boggling thinking about it. Spent the next 3 months hanging out, getting myself back together. Blew through all the savings for the most part. But in the end, it all worked out. Got a better paying job in the same field. Pretty much zero stress. Couldn't be happier. Story 13. Yes, I have PTSD. I've had depressive episodes on and off throughout my life, and they started to have bigger consequences in adulthood. Out of college, I worked at a big software company, making a lot of money. I struggled at first because my organization kept shuffling around and I lost all the relationships that made me feel safe. Then I stabilized and did incredible work that impressed tons of people. Then my anxiety problems spiraled out of control and I declined for a year and a half. Eventually, I couldn't take it one more day and I quit. I lasted about 3 years at that job. I was unemployed for a year, then got another job at a software. This time, I made even more money. The pressure was higher. And in spite of all my hard work, I got fired after 12 months. It's been more than a year since. I'm just now trying to go back to work. I'm running out of money. I'm looking to go into contracting because it might be lower pressure and lower pay. I'm struggling mightily to confront this because work is terrifying. I've been putting in the work in psychoanalysis. I have ruthlessly examined every aspect of my inner life. There are dramatic changes in the way I view the world and myself. I believe that I have value and am ready to go back to work. I also believe that no one will want me, that everyone can see that I'm still broken, and that any smart employer will put two and two together. This part of me is the part that wants to go jump off a bridge. Experience tells me I will not do this, so the only way to go is forward. Story 14. Worked out really well in the end. Took me about 2 months to find another job, but luckily can support like 90% of our expenses on just her wages, so it wasn't as hard on us as it could have been if I didn't have her to fall back on. I have a much better job now that I even somewhat enjoy and pays better too. If you think you can manage it, it might be worth it, to be honest. My spouse just left a job, and we're about to enter this exact situation. Were there any bad parts of being off work? I want to give her some time to recuperate and shop for a really perfect job, so it isn't a rush. I can support our finances easily while she's off, but I do worry that she'll end up feeling depressed or purposeless. I'm hoping she'll be able to take a few months to recenter herself and then begin looking for a well-fitting job. In the meantime, I want to ensure that her mental health is in a good place, while also not coming off as pushing her to get back to work. Story 15. In September of last year, I left a job of 5 years without another one lined up. I had several months to find one. I just didn't try. In Nave, I accepted the first job offered, and I was more miserable than when I was unemployed and broke. It was my first Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 desk job, and it was mind-numbing. I was in a tiny office with 3 other people who never talked to me. As it was a manufacturing plant, and my office was right next to the line, it was loud and stinky. My manager was supposed to be training me, but she was inattentive for the most part. After I completed and submitted an end-of-quarter report, she said it was wrong, and she was pretty sure she had accidentally skipped parts of my training. I felt completely invisible and worthless, so I quit. Back to being unemployed and broke. But in March, I accepted a very different type of job at a nice hotel. I love my schedule, I enjoy my work and my coworkers, and boss are friendly, hardworking, and really pleasant to be around. I make $3 per hour less than the crappy desk job, but I'm infinitely happier and getting up for work is much easier. Story 16, I work in a fairly tight-knit community in healthcare, and everyone knows everyone else in the industry in our city kind of. My former boss quit on 2 days' notice because she found out her doctor diagnosed her with a TIA, mild stroke, basically the worst possible kind of headache that lasted for 3 days straight. They determined it was because she was stressed at work. She was in her early 40s, so not close to retirement. No one I've talked to has heard from or about her in the last 3 years. She was a great boss. I remember those 3 days. She was quiet and stayed in her office, but was still very nice and helpful. I hope she's okay. Story 17. My father quit his job because he was severely depressed since he was working nights and didn't get to see his 3 kids, and they refused to move his position. He ended up not being able to find a good job, and the bank we were paying for our house was being a jerk, and my mom got diagnosed with MS. We ended up homeless for a year. Then we found our ground again, and my dad is still working a crappy job. But us kids have all made lives for ourselves, allowing him and my mom. So save enough for them to go around in an RV traveling the US. It was a rough time, but I'm really glad he did it. I'd rather be homeless a bit than have a dead dad. Story 18. I had to quit a job I had for 8 years because it got to a point where every night I just went home and cried. I was getting underpaid the whole time and working 12-plus-hour days, 6 days a week for a while, and being treated like crap while I was doing it. Why the hell would anyone stay in a job like that? If I hadn't been in that situation, I would probably ask that too. But it was like an abusive marriage. I was made to feel like less than dirt. I was made to feel like I was lucky to have that job, and I had rent to pay. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and I gave my notice. I wound up working there for a few more months because I had no spine or self-respect left. When I finally got out, I had a breakdown and wound up in a psychiatric hospital twice. It took me 5 whole years to recover and find another job. I now work in a completely different field, in a crap-kicking entry-level job. I get paid properly and treated with basic human respect. And I will never work for a small business again as long as I live. Story 19. My fiance did this about 2 years ago. I was a little nervous, but I supported her. Her boss was a jerk who actually liked to crush the spirits of those lower than him in the org chart. We live in a really expensive city, Washington, D.C., so I was a little cautious about it, but I saw that the job was really, really bad for her. Somehow, she was able to land a job within 1 month. Not very easy to do here, so it worked out fine. She walked dogs and did random jobs for about 3 weeks after she quit. My story is a little different. My last day was on Monday of this. I didn't necessarily quit with no options. I've done freelance work for about 5 years, in addition to working a full-time job. My job was unnecessarily stressful too, and it got to the point where I thought I could make just as much, if not more, money going off on my own. This week has been amazing for my mental health. I've landed a few contracts, and at least for the next few months, I'll be making more than I would have just doing my old job. I'm no expert here, but it worked out for us. Mental health is very important, and people should always prioritize. Story 20. Yes, my first job out of college, I was a logistics broker, so it's a sales position. I was making 70K plus at 23 years old. My first job, basically all from commission because the salary was crap. That being said, starting a book of business from ground zero is really hard work. In the industry of trucking, it never stops. Getting calls at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., Christmas, all weekend. Where's my delivery? Can you find me a truck? Trying to keep on good terms with customers for mess ups you have no control over. Not to mention every month, starting back at $0 and never knowing how the market is going to change. I started drinking heavily at night and taking sleeping pills. Started finding a gray hair or two. It was bad. I was promoted to sales manager and eventually offered a general manager position, the only woman in the company to accomplish this. I was proud but knew I could no longer handle the stress. I quit and I never felt so much relief in my life. Looking back, I just shouldn't have taken it so seriously. Sorry, your lampshades are going to be late. I don't care. But I cared about my customers. But no job is worth your mental and physical health. Take care of yourselves, ladies and gents. I'm now married with 2 beautiful daughters, and I'm a stay-at-home mom, the best job in the world until they are in school. I thought I'd be in sales forever. I never imagined I'd be here, and I'm so happy. Story 21. I worked as a child and youth worker in a group home for physically aggressive youth for over 8 years. At the end of my career, I burned out hard, very close to a nervous breakdown, lots of anxiety about going to work, having nightmares of working when I slept. One day I got in my car to go to work and found I physically couldn't move. Not until I decided to call in. I called and quit without giving 2 weeks notice. I couldn't bring myself to go back. I went to counseling, threw away all my workload, took a year off and lived off EI. There was a program called Second Careers that gave me funding to go back to school. I went to school for something I've always thought about during my previous career, dental assisting. I've been in the field for over 2 years and I love it. I'm very happy I left a job that was killing me physically and emotionally and went to something I'm interested in and am very good at.